Hey everyone, David here with my review of the latest episode of The Walking Dead, which I turned into and noticed it was going to be a 90-minute episode. And this is the 4th episode into Season 6, titled Here Not Here, Here's Not Here. And, I mean, it's not a finale or premiere of any kind, whether it be the regular season finale or season premiere or mid-season premiere or mid-season finale. It wasn't any of those things. It was literally just a episode thrown into that marks the halfway point of this first batch of episodes that we get this year before taking that break and then having Walking Dead come back in February. So I was thinking to myself that considering that it's 90 minutes long, some shit is going to go down, especially after the ending of that last week's episode. I'm like, oh my god, I better get ready. And then I noticed that every single clip that they were showing in the previously on The Walking Dead had Morgan in it. It was Morgan all the way back to Season 1 till now. And that's when I realized this episode's going to be about Morgan, isn't it? Yes, it is. The entire 90-minute episode is about Morgan, which leads to what could be kind of considered my first and one of my only few complaints with this episode, which is not necessarily about the episode, but more so about the placement of the episode. It was kind of strange because I knew that we were not going to find out about whether or not Glenn actually did die in that scene. In fact, I'm willing to bet anything that they're going to hold on to that card for another few episodes, and maybe they're going to spring him saying, "Look, I'm alive," in like the mid-season finale or something like that. It's going to be like this big reveal, this big surprise, and they're going to hold on to it for as long as possible to keep us waiting, because trust me, they're not going to just throw that out there and be like, "Oh, look, I got you." No, they're gonna let it marinate a little bit before presenting us with the entree. They're not just going to spring it out. So I knew that in this next episode we're probably not going to find out about Glenn. So it's going to be somewhat torture, but I understand what they're trying to do. What I was kind of expecting, though, was some kind of continuation or resolution to what's going to happen with Rick in the RV, Daryl and Sasha and Abraham out there trying to lure the walkers away from Alexandria, while we still have half of them heading towards Alexandria, and then the people there trying to retain their defenses along with Morgan in there. But then, no, we cut back to how Morgan went from being that psychopath that he was in Season 3, that demented, tortured soul, to now being one of the most pacific badasses that has ever graced the small screen. And if you're going to do something like that and break the momentum after that cliffhanger ending that we got last week, you better do it right. Fortunately, I can honestly say that much like last week's episode, this next one was definitely a standout. Not just because it's a standalone episode for Morgan, but also because it felt like a 90-minute short film of this man going through the zombie apocalypse and then tackling his inner demons to become a better person. I mean, if you were to strip away every kind of background knowledge that you know about this character, about the fact that this is a TV show that has been on the air for almost 6 full seasons now, and you just say, look, we got this character named Morgan, we're going to put some details about what type of person he used to be, maybe add 15-20 minutes to the running time of this episode to kind of not flash back to his past life about what we saw in Season 1, but just like put little details here and there. It could be a legitimate movie, and that's how I felt watching this entire episode. And standalone episodes is starting to become a little bit of a trend. This past week we actually had one in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that centered on just one character for the majority of the time, and we got kind of a similar thing going on here in this 90-minute episode, where the first 15-20 minutes or so focuses on just Morgan escaping the place that he was in Season 3, but still having a really crippled mind and going around legitimately killing every single thing, whether it be an animal or a walker or even a person that didn't try to harm them. He would kill him because in his mind he has to clear, and he's just completely messed up. And a technique that I absolutely love that they used in this episode was adding that little Gaussian blur around the... Is it Gaussian or Gaussian? I don't know. But they added that little blur effect around the lens to show whenever he was kind of, lost his marbles, and he's just not there. His mind, like another character mentions, is not there. His body is, but he's not all there, like they always say. He's, almost literally in his mind not there. And I love the use of this effect. It was one of my favorite elements about this episode. But then he finds a cabin in the woods. Cabin in the woods, wow. Anyways, he finds a cabin in which he comes across the Zodiac Killer. No, it's actually a man named Eastman who manages to get the upper hand and incarcerates him within this cabin. However, this guy, he's not like your typical zombie apocalypse, ravaged survivor. No, this guy is living the life within his cabin because he's got this system. He's got food. He's a vegetarian, so everything's very organic and clean. He's just straightforward, and Morgan's just wondering to himself like, who the hell is this guy? But because he's also crazy, man, it is from this point on where the episode just kicks off momentum, because from that point till the very end, it's all about the relationship between these two characters and how this character Eastman is actually the person that Morgan was referencing to whenever somebody asked Morgan back in Alexandria, how'd you learn how to fight like that, or what happened to you? This is that full explanation. And though their relationship is kind of familiar territory, whether it be with a TV show or a movie, where we got that mentor figure, and then we got this tortured character that has been through some stuff and is now, because of that, he's going through, like Eastman says, post-traumatic stress post-traumatic stress disorder. There you go. You kind of have an idea of how this is going to play out, and it does check all those boxes, but if it's written well and acted well, it can definitely pull you in and have you become invested. And it's all thanks to not only the writing between these two characters, because it's both funny and endearing and charming, but also the performances by both Lenny James and John Carroll, or is it James Carroll Lynch? John Carroll Lynch? I think it was John Carroll Lynch. I think that was his name. But he was in the Zodiac. He was in Zodiac and amongst other movies. He was recently in American Horror Story as that clown with the big face. I don't watch American Horror Story. I just saw some pictures there where it's like, hey, look, it's that guy. But this guy, I remember seeing him in plenty of other stuff, including Zodiac, and thinking to myself, man, this is a very underrated actor, and he definitely demonstrated that once more in this episode, where he just has this charisma about him, but at the same time he sold the background to his character. I empathized with him, and I felt like he was a genuine mirror to Morgan, who was on off of the deep end, whereas he was on the shallow end. And just these two characters complementing one another as the episode proceeds, and learning how they care for each other and at the same time learn off of one another, is just very well done, and the performances are standout. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Lenny James gets nominated for this episode. I remember Jonathan Banks got nominated recently for Best Supporting Actor for Better Call Saul, and he was hardly in that, but he did have that one episode where it was all about him. So hopefully the fact that Morgan got himself a 90-minute episode will hopefully be enough. And one of the things that I loved about seeing their friendship grow is that besides the little details about what Eastman would teach Morgan about cherishing life, and the little things that I'm sure Rick will look at and be like, man, that is a waste of time, is the fact that it wasn't perfect. There are some bumps on the road. You got this scene right here where Morgan actually kind of falls off the wagon, so to speak, by seeing the Walker version of that kid he killed earlier in the episode, and that kind of breaks him just a tiny bit. But hopefully, fortunately, later on, he kind of resets onto the right path once more, especially after having Eastman get bit by said Walker, and this kind of puts things into perspective for both him and Eastman. And I just love how casual Eastman is. Again, mirroring that other character from last week's episode where the guy got bit and he's like, oh, well, we keep going. Eastman reacted almost a similar way that is very true to his character, where he's suffering from the fever, which, again, somewhat of an inconsistency with how these effects work. But anyways, that's besides the point. That's probably the only actual complaint I have with this episode, is that as soon as Eastman was introduced and his friendship with Morgan was being developed, I was hoping that they wouldn't do the somewhat cliche thing of, I mean, the story between the two of them was already kind of familiar, but I was thinking, please don't go the cliche route of having him be killed off, and that being the reason for Morgan continuing this path of being a pacifist, while at the same time maintaining this code, and also have the means to take care of himself and to take care of the people that he cares about. I kind of wish that they maybe would have parted somehow, some way, instead of having him be killed off. Because I don't know, I've seen that way too many times. I was hoping for them to try something different, and instead he got bit, and I'm like, okay, there you go, he's gone. But at least it ended on a very beautiful, somber note. Instead of seeing him like, all life is precious. Ugh. It goes off on a humorous beat where he's like, okay, I'm ready, I got a gun over there. He was just so very nonchalant about it. But instead of leaving on a shot of like his body or whatever, we just see Morgan by the lake or by whatever, that body of water, training and then gathering his stuff to take off, and continuing that musical motif of Morgan's theme was just a perfect way to end the episode. But it doesn't stop there. The episode then ends similarly to how it began, where we got Morgan talking to the camera, almost as if he's telling the story, and then calling back to one of his earlier lines in that first few seconds or so, where he says, "You wanted everything from me, so here it is." That's where I knew he's talking to the guy who we all thought he killed, but it turns out he kept him alive once more. It's the same exact guy who held him up for his supplies and was more than likely going to kill him, that one wolf kid with the long hair. Turns out he was talking to him this whole entire time, telling him his life story in hopes of maybe getting him to turn around. But we see that that is no use. And that was actually a very nice way to end it, because after seeing everything that happened between him and Eastman, things are then put into even more contrast, where maybe we might be seeing the foreshadowment of Morgan having to cross the line of having to kill after that slimy little kid says, if I don't die, I am going to kill you and everyone you care about here in this town. And that is what just, you can just see in Morgan's face that he wants to do it, but he just can't, because there's just something so rare about the way Eastman was living his life that can barely be found in this world. And that's what made this episode so special, is that after something so dire like the past few episodes, especially after seeing what happened with Glenn and the situation that Rick finds himself in and the threat that is being imposed onto Alexandria, it's a very refreshing thing to see an episode like this, especially with a very sympathetic character like Morgan. I just wish the placing would have been a little bit different, because I understand that we weren't going to catch up with what happened with Glenn if that wasn't in fact his death, but I was hoping for maybe to catch up with Daryl, Sasha, and Abraham, or maybe how's Rick gonna get out of his situation. It kind of breaks off the momentum. Still, I can honestly say that Here's Not Here is one of my favorite episodes, along with last week's. So for that, I give Here's Not Here a low 9 out of 10. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of The Walking Dead, and I'll see you guys next time.